Daisy Appleton loved the first light of dawn, when the petals of her prized roses glistened under gentle sunbeams. Working from home in her modest cottage by Peachtree Pond, she was well known for organizing the annual Flower Festival, one of the town's most cherished events. All year long she nurtured buds and blossoms, liaised with the local horticularists, and ensured the vibrant pageant delighted visitors. Her deep love of flowers and cordial way with people made her a perfect choice for the job, and she poured her heart into every aspect of the festival. As the festival approached, Daisy's life was a delightful whirlwind of color and fragrance. She coordinated with the enthusiastic Dahlia Society, posted the official programs for gardening competitions, and still found time to prune roses in her own backyard. Most days, she awoke to the chirping of birds in the old oak by her window, donned her wide-brimmed straw hat, and trotted across the dew-soaked grass to tend her flower beds. But, on one misty morning, she discovered something that made her forget, however briefly, the comforting routine she so loved. While retrieving her mail from the white latticed mailbox, Daisy spotted a strange arrangement of rose petals on the doorstep. The bright red petals formed large letters. "Find the heirloom." She stooped to pick them up, baffled. Peachtree Pond was a tranquil place, not prone to vandalism or pranks. Though the message rattled her, Daisy told herself it might just be a misguided joke. She carefully swept the petals into a small paper bag, and for the rest of the morning tried not to dwell on it, but she couldn't help noticing that the words, "Find the heirloom," had a chilling demand to them. She recalled that there were rumors about an old family heirloom missing for decades, connected somehow to the earliest days of the town. Peachtree Pond had been founded well over a century ago by the Merriweather and the Harper families, who initially established the orchard groves and farmland surrounding the pond. The story went that a valuable locket, passed down through the Merriweather line, had vanished mysteriously one spring. When it wasn't recovered, folks assumed it was simply lost to time. Over the years, the Merriweathers themselves passed on or moved away. Eventually, the story became remarkable only to local historians and the occasional curious tourist. Still, Daisy had never heard of any direct link between that rumored locket and the modern flower festival. The festival was just a pleasant tradition, started 3 generations ago by a group of flower enthusiasts. Daisy tried to shrug the incident off and focus on the day's tasks. She walked into the small workshop attached to her cottage, where she kept colorful pamphlets, seed packets, and an assortment of ribbons for prize bouquets. She was busy reviewing a schedule for the festival's awarding ceremony when she heard the mail slot creak. Hurrying to the front door, Daisy glanced down and froze. A single sunflower with its vibrant golden petals beckoned ominously. In the center, the seeds were arranged in small letters, barely legible, but enough to make her heart skip a beat. "You're running out of time." Daisy's chest quivered. Now it seemed absolutely clear that this wasn't a silly neighborly prank. She locked the door, took the sunflower carefully to the kitchen, and laid it on the table. She grabbed her phone, deciding to call her friend Mildred at the local sheriff's substation. However, the line rang repeatedly, then went to voicemail. All day, Daisy felt as if a weight were pressing on her shoulders. At the greenhouse behind the orchard, she met her friend Olive, who ran an herbalist stand in town. Olive immediately noticed Daisy's anxious face. "What's troubling you?" Olive asked, adjusting her sun hat. Reluctant to worry too many people, Daisy explained in hushed tones that she'd received a strange message spelled out with rose petals that morning. Olive's usually peaceful face clouded with concern. "Does it have something to do with the old Merriweather heirloom?" she asked. "I recall you mentioned the note said, 'Find the heirloom.'" Daisy nodded. She recounted the second notice. "Somebody left me a sunflower with the seeds arranged into another threat. It said, 'I'm running out of time.'" Olive frowned. "This is bizarre. You should definitely go to the sheriff as soon as possible. But maybe it's connected to some rumor about this locket. Maybe the culprit believes you know something." I don't know anything about it, Daisy insisted. At least, not beyond the usual law. And I can't imagine anyone thinking I'd have more information. Why single me out at all? They both fell silent for a moment, the scent of rosemary and thyme drifting through the greenhouse. Eventually, Olive placed a reassuring hand on Daisy's shoulder and said, "Let me do some digging through the old county records. I sometimes come across genealogical notes when I research the origins of medicinal plants in the region. It's a stretch, but maybe I can find a clue." Daisy thanked her, feeling a mixture of gratitude and dread. She tried to continue her day's tasks without letting the unsettling messages consume her thoughts. However, later that evening, when darkness cast long shadows across her living room, Daisy couldn't help feeling jumpy at every creak. Rain began to patter on the roof, and the rustling winds outside made her wonder if someone was lurking around. Over cups of chamomile tea, Daisy softly repeated that everything was going to be fine. She was sure the culprit was just trying to scare her, but she couldn't imagine why. The next morning, Daisy woke to the sound of a shrill knock at her front door. She hurried to open it and found Mildred standing on the porch, the silver-haired volunteer deputy sheriff. Mildred was breathless, her eyes wide. "Daisy, I got your message," she said. "Sorry I didn't pick up right away. Our lines have been erratic. I was going to come by, but something else happened in town last night." "Another threat?" Daisy guessed, feeling a twinge in her stomach. Mildred nodded. "Mr. Greenwood, the caretaker at Lakeside Gardens, reported that somebody broke in. Nothing was taken except for a few roses, apparently, but they spelled out Daisy in front of the greenhouse entrance. Everybody in town knows you're the flower festival organizer." Mildred paused. "We suspect it might have something to do with the same notes you've been receiving." A prickling sensation travelled down Daisy's arms. This was far beyond a mere trick. Goosebumps arose on her skin at the thought that someone was telling her, not so subtly, that she was next. Without hesitation, she let Mildred in, swiftly showing her the leftover petals and the sunflower. Mildred studied them with a tight-lipped expression. "This might look harmless, but it's clearly a threat," said Mildred. "Most folks around here are good, peaceable people, so let's hope this is just one misguided individual carrying out a twisted plan. But we can't let it slide." Later that day, Daisy found a moment to speak with Harriet Mills, the oldest living resident of Peachtree Pond and a veritable repository of town law. Harriet was easily in her late 80s, yet she walked around with a brisk vigor that put some folks half her age to shame. Her white hair was always neatly twisted back in a bun, and her weathered hands suggested someone used to garden labor. Over tea at Harriet's quaint white cottage, Daisy explained what had been happening. Harriet listened intently, occasionally sipping from her floral teacup. When Daisy finished, Harriet set down her cup and gave a nervous sigh. "At the center of all this might indeed be the Merriweather locket," Harriet said softly, "but it disappeared a long time ago. The story goes that the last Merriweather daughter, Eliza, wore the locket everywhere. It was fashioned from gold, shaped like a heart, encrusted with tiny rubies. After her passing, the locket was locked away by her grieving husband, who claimed it brought him nothing but pain. Eventually, it slipped from town records." Daisy nodded. "But how would that connect to the festival? Are there any legends about it being buried somewhere, or hidden among something as inconspicuous as a flower arrangement?" Harriet pursed her lips. "Not that I recall. However, I do remember an old rumor that the locket was hidden in the Merriweather greenhouse, which used to stand where Lakeside Gardens is now. If you say someone spelled out your name there, perhaps they're urging you to find it. Or they truly believe you're the only one who can." "But why me?" Daisy asked, exasperated. "I have no special connection to the Merriweathers. My family moved here from upstate only a few decades ago, and we certainly don't have any secrets about old rubies. I'd love to soothe everyone's concerns, but I can't produce an heirloom that I don't have." Harriet offered a sympathetic shrug. "Mysteries sometimes find the unlikeliest of people. But be careful, Daisy. If these messages continue, you may want to stay with someone until it's sorted out. Daisy thanked Harriet for her insights and made her way home, pondering the possibility that the lost heirloom might indeed be somewhere within Lakeside Gardens. She recalled that the rightful owners of that land had sold it to the county years back for the express purpose of building a botanical park. Could it be that the locket was never truly found? If whoever was threatening her believed she could track it down, there must be a specific reason. Was there a clue hidden in some old documentation, or maybe in the Merryweather archives? That evening, Daisy racked her brain trying to recall every detail from her previous flower festival planning sessions. She was the caretaker of various old records, including minutes from council meetings about the festival's location, budgets, planting schedules, and sponsor contributions. Perhaps some note about the original greenhouse was included. Daisy decided to search through the file boxes in her workshop. She found herself hunched over stacks of papers and old ledger books, receipts for seeds, catalogues, festival posters from decades prior. She combed through them with meticulous care. Eventually, a slip of paper caught her eye, a typed note from 70 years ago, referencing a rumor about a hidden piece of jewelry among the festival exhibits. Its source was listed as anonymous. The writer insisted that the original organizer back then had discovered the locket inside a hidden panel of a wooden planter. The note was incomplete, but it mentioned that, due to unfortunate circumstances, the organizer never made the find public. Daisy wondered if that organizer had locked the locket away again to keep it safe. As she stood, her eyes burning from reading under the dim lamp, Daisy heard a rustling by her front door. She hastily blew out the lamp and tiptoed to the door, peering through the small peephole. She couldn't see much except shadows cast by her porch light. The doorknob rattled slightly, then silence. Daisy's heart thumped wildly. After a long moment, she mustered the courage to fling open the door, only to find a single lily pinned to the wood, its white petals spotted with red lettering from some kind of dye. "Do what you must before we reveal the truth." Daisy nearly dropped the flower as she jolted back. She looked left and right, the night so black she could barely see the outline of her fence. Her hands shook as she carefully removed the lily. She slammed and locked the door. Feeling alone and uneasy, Daisy fished her phone from her pocket and called Olive, who immediately told her to come stay at her bungalow. Daisy grabbed an overnight bag, the lily, and a few documents, and rushed out. Olive's home was a haven of warmth, with herbal bundles hanging from the rafters and a gentle glow from a reading lamp. Daisy curled up on the couch, while Olive brewed a pot of calming lavender tea. Over steaming cups, Daisy recounted the new message, her voice trembling. Olive shook her head in concern. "I've been doing my own research. The Merryweather locket was rumored to hold hidden inscriptions, or even a small key inside. I have no idea if that's accurate, but the story came up a few times in old strange local incidents articles from the county library. Well, if it still exists, it must be extremely valuable," Daisy said. "I guess that explains why someone is so obsessed. Maybe they believe I know the location, or that the festival is a cover to retrieve it. The question is, how do I convince them I'm clueless, or find it quickly before they do anything drastic?" The next day, after an uneasy night on Olive's couch, Daisy decided to meet with Mildred at the sheriff's substation and share everything she'd discovered in the records. They agreed to keep the matter quiet, to avoid stirring panic in the community right before the big festival. Mildred, for her part, had checked out Lakeside Gardens thoroughly and found no trace of the locket or additional clues. But she had noticed fresh footprints near the old foundation stones in the far corner of the park, where the Merryweather greenhouse had once stood. Mildred suspected the culprit had been searching secretly at night. Determined not to let a criminal overshadow the upcoming festival, Daisy assembled a small investigative team: Mildred, Olive, and Harriet. They would quietly hunt for clues while Daisy continued organizing the festival. Harriet suggested they look for any old letters or diaries from the time the original greenhouse was demolished. Olive promised to peruse every historical snippet in her possession. Mildred planned to stake out the park after sundown with a flashlight. Daisy herself would systematically search the corners of her workshop for more old festival documents that might offer a hint. As the festival drew closer, Daisy busied herself with final checks, verifying the stage was set for the opening ceremonies, ensuring the horticulture competitions were in order, and scheduling the local band for an evening of music. She strove to appear as cheerful and untroubled as ever, but inside she was wary. She found herself scanning the crowd for hidden threats, double-checking behind the stage for suspicious petals. Eventually, a morning arrived bright and cool, marking the start of the much-anticipated flower festival. The streets of Peachtree Pond came alive with stalls displaying everything from marigolds to orchids. Townsfolk and visitors alike strolled about, their faces lit with delight. Just as Daisy was about to lead a group of volunteer judges through the entry displays, Olive sidled up to her, carefully stepping between pots of zinnias. "Daisy, I found something last night," she whispered, gripping an old letter in her hand. "It's from a Merriweather relative who wrote to the Flower Society decades ago. Look here." Olive pointed to a passage referencing a hidden compartment in a large wooden planter, rumoured to have travelled from the original greenhouse to the festival grounds as a decorative piece. "It might be the clue we need." Daisy scanned the letter quickly. It stated that the wooden planter was carved with an intricate floral motif. She was certain she'd seen a planter like that stored behind the festival's main hall, where older props were kept. Heart pounding with excitement, she beckoned Olive to follow. Slipping away from her official duties, Daisy wove through the festival crowd until they reached the locked storage area. After rummaging through dusty backdrops and outdated signs, Daisy saw it. A large wooden planter in the shape of a rectangular trough, with carved roses and grapevines across its edges. She recognized it from old festival photographs featuring long-ago winners. Crouching beside the planter, Olive traced her fingers along the carvings. At first, they saw nothing unusual. Then, near the bottom edge, Daisy noticed a small seam that indicated a compartment. They pried gently, and the thin wood panels slid open. Inside was a small sealed box, about the size of a deck of cards. Daisy's heart fluttered. With trembling hands she opened it. Nestled in a swirl of old velvet was a heart-shaped gold locket, each side glinting with tiny rubies. Even caked in dust, it was breathtaking. "It really exists," Olive breathed. "And it's been right under our noses all these years." Overcome with relief and apprehension, Daisy carefully tucked the box into her pocket. The question of whether to turn it over to the authorities immediately weighed on her. But her mind quickly flashed to the threatening messages. If she was the designated finder, what was the next step? Before Daisy could fully absorb the shock, a voice hissed from behind a stack of plywood backdrops. "Hand it over." A figure stepped forward into the dim light. It was Gregory Blythe, a local historian and genealogist who had sometimes consulted with Daisy on festival history. He looked uncharacteristically disheveled, his glasses slightly askew. In his hand, he clutched a small gardening spade. Daisy's voice shook. "Gregory, you been leaving the threats in Petals?" he sneered. "I didn't want to scare you too badly, Daisy, but you left me no choice. I've spent years trying to uncover that locket. The Merriweather legacy belongs with those who can truly appreciate its worth. You were the key all along, because you have access to every old festival prop and archive in town. I had to nudge you to do the digging. Give me the locket, or else." Olive stepped between them. "We're calling the sheriff," she said firmly. "Put that spade down." Gregory advanced menacingly, his knuckles taut. Daisy's heart pounded as she reflexively grabbed a garden rake leaning against a shelf. Fear knotted in her stomach, but she didn't budge. You can't keep it, Gregory insisted through clenched teeth, trying to tower intimidatingly over them. That locket is invaluable. Surrender it now. Before anyone else could move, Harriet's voice rang out from the doorway. Stop right there, Mr. Blythe. Accompanying Harriet was Mildred, her official deputy star glinting in the faint light. Mildred aimed a stern glare at Gregory, hand poised near her baton. Gregory's eyes darted from Harriet to Mildred, his shoulders sagging. He made one last frantic lunge for Daisy's pocket, but Harriet, surprisingly agile, blocked him with a swift push. Mildred seized Gregory by the arm, unceremoniously disarming him of the spade. It's over, Mildred said in a clipped tone. She snapped handcuffs onto Gregory's wrists, and he slumped in defeat. Daisy felt her pulse hammering in her ears as she reached for the locket in her pocket. Carefully, she handed it to Mildred, who nodded solemnly. We'll do the official paperwork and see that it's returned to the rightful owners or placed in the care of the Historical Society, she said, eyeing Gregory with a look of distaste. He'll have plenty to answer for. As Gregory was led off, Harriet stepped forward, resting a comforting hand on Daisy's arm. You did the town a great service, my dear. Nobody else could have found that planter so quickly, and now the festival doesn't have to be overshadowed by threats. Daisy exhaled a heavy breath, relief flooding her body. Olive squeezed her friend's shoulder comfortingly. They all were safe, at least for now. The lost locket was recovered and the culprit caught. Though Daisy's hand still trembled, she managed a small smile. It's almost hard to believe we've solved this, she said. I guess the next step is to finish hosting the festival. An hour later, Daisy stood on the main stage in the center of the festival grounds, gazing out at the crowd with renewed warmth. The news of Gregory's arrest had been kept relatively quiet to avoid spoiling the atmosphere. The band played a cheerful tune while families wandered among the stalls. Children giggled, faces smudged with traces of cotton candy, while enthusiastic gardeners swapped tips on hydrangea cultivation. The bright sun illuminated blooming chrysanthemums and the ribbons of color fanning out from every stall. Daisy recognized that, for all the turmoil of the past few days, this was what truly mattered: the coming together of the community, the celebration of life and beauty in nature. Soon, Harriet took the microphone to announce the special horticulture awards, and Daisy joined her. As Harriet finished naming last year's champion for the best flower arrangement, she turned to Daisy with a gentle smile. Before we present this year's trophy, let's all give a round of applause to our devoted organizer, Daisy Appleton, for her tireless efforts in making this festival a success yet again. A wave of applause rippled through the crowd, and Daisy's face warmed. While the exertion and anxiety from the threats lingered, she was reminded of why she took on this role in the first place: to share her love of flowers and strengthen the bonds among neighbors. After the ceremony, Daisy retreated to the sanctuary of a small table behind the stage, where Olive gave her a celebratory glass of lemonade. Mildred joined them, out of uniform now that her duty for the day was done, and Harriet found a seat as well. They chatted in low voices, relieved to have a private moment. It's not every festival that includes finding a legendary heirloom, Mildred quipped, but once the Historical Society finishes verifying it, they'll likely put the locket on display with a plaque that explains the story. Daisy nodded. That's a comforting thought. Maybe a piece of our heritage will finally be preserved properly. I'd love for people to appreciate it without any more drama. She sipped her lemonade. And I'm happy to let it go. I never want to see another threatening petal arrangement again. Olive patted Daisy's hand. I'm so proud of your courage. You held it together through all those ominous messages. Daisy gave a soft laugh, damming the tears of relief that threatened to spill. I never imagined that my biggest challenge this year would involve a long-lost gold locket. Flower festivals are supposed to be peaceful, but I guess life sometimes surprises us. The four women clinked their lemonade glasses in a quiet toast. Amid the crowd's happy hum, carnival games and music drifting on the breeze, Daisy finally felt the tension in her shoulders ease. The festival had triumphed, and the hidden treasure was no longer lost to rumor and speculation. Once Gregory faced the consequences, Peachtree Pond would return to its serene rhythm, and the memory of the threatening Petals would fade into just another curious tale told around local cafes. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills, the swan boats floated across Peachtree Pond's still waters, carrying families and couples wrapped in light sweaters. Daisy stood at the edge of the pond, gazing at the orangey-pink reflection of the sunset. In the reflection, her own silhouette looked peaceful for the first time in days. She thought of the festival's legacy, the joy it brought each year, the way it gathered neighbors and newcomers alike. Rarely did their small town experience such drama, and while Daisy wouldn't wish for a repeat, she did feel strangely grateful for the bond it had created between her, Olive, Harriet, and Mildred. Content in the knowledge that Peachtree Pond's festival would continue to bloom year after year, Daisy smiled to herself. Soon enough the swirl of color and excitement would fade into next spring, and she would be back to her gentle routine, tending roses, planning programs, and welcoming visitors to their tranquil community. If any future crisis arose, she knew she had allies to stand by her. The wind carried the faintest perfume of lilacs, and Daisy inhaled deeply. Tomorrow she would open her front door without fear of ominous Petals, secure in the knowledge that this particular mystery was at last laid to rest